how would you describe life as a Christian? As we talk about this Becoming series, how would you describe what it's like to be a Christian, to be following Jesus? Now, whether you are, there are a decent number of people in here that are like, I'm here, I'm not even sure if I believe, but I'm here right now, and that is fine. And what maybe your perspective of Christians, maybe how would you describe what the life that Christians, that other Christians live? How would you describe that? And there's a lot of different descriptions that we can have, but I want to hear some of you guys shout out. What is it like, whether it's your perception of what you see other Christians living, or how would you describe life as a Christian? Give a couple adjectives, descriptive words. Go. Thankful. Prayerful. It doesn't have to be positive. Either way. Joy. Loving. What was that? Using. Confusing. Yes. Challenging. What was that? Serene. Let's go. There's so many different words that are used to describe faith, and that's the reality. It can be confusing at times. And that's the whole series that we just went through with light in the dark. There will be light, and going, I don't get it. They're going to be challenging. It can be something like, man, I think it'd be a heck of a lot easier if I just dropped this whole Jesus thing and I just did what I wanted. And there's some aspects of that are true, and some aspects of that's like, well, then you're just going to find new problems that are a heck of a lot worse. The reality is that when Jesus describes life with him, he describes it in John 10:10. He says, the enemy came to steal, the thief, who is Satan. Life with him feels like things being stolen, killed, and destroyed. It's this promise of this beautiful thing that actually slowly starts to kill you from the inside out. And it looks good, but man, the thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And then he says, this is what life with me is like. I have come that people may have life and have it to the full. Another version of this translation of the Greek, it says to have abundant life. Now, how many people would describe life as a Christian, whether by perception or by actual experience, as abundant? Oh my goodness, there's plenty. There's so much. The blessing is there. The purpose is there. The life is there. It's not that all the problems go away, but holy smokes, he's always consistently there. And the things that I'm going through, it's like I got purpose, I got calling, I've got life, I've got joy, I've got love, I've got endurance, and I've got a place to go whenever I feel like I don't. Man, it is abundant. How many people actually would describe that? And that's what this whole series is about going, how do we find the abundant life that Jesus says it is like to follow him? Because what we get sometimes is our message. If we can pull up the graph of this spiritual growth graph, what we get sometimes is this message. This is what it looks like to grow in your spiritual walk, and it starts up at 12 o'clock, and where you do not have life in Christ, where you are doing your own thing and spiritually dead. And then there's something in us that tells us that once we are planted, once we say yes to Jesus, that's where, I just live in this abundance and it's perfect all the time because I said yes. And the reality is that abundance, that we have a thing inside of us that wants to hold on to our flesh, that wants to hold on to the way that we used to do things, the things that I want instead of the things that God wants. And so we have to actually go through this process of discovering this abundant life. And then that's where we talked about being rooted. We talked about being rooted in our faith and being rooted specifically in Christ and growing roots deep down into Him. And last week, Morgan, come on, she preached a word. And come on, give her a hand. Let's go. If you were blessed, it was incredible. And if you missed it, you got to go back on our YouTube page or collectiveomaha.com/watch, and you'll be able to see it there. But it talks about being developed and keep becoming and being developed as a follower of Christ. And so as we look at this, I want to start focusing towards the bottom of this graph. And being rooted is the start, but then we have to start growing. If we're ever going to see this abundance, you look at any psychological study of where do we find purpose and where do we find meaning in life, and there's graphs of like basic needs that we got to have, and then at the very top it talks about knowing who you are and living in a place where you are not just living for yourself, but you're giving. Where you see impact, where your life is defined more as that. And you'll see this. That's a study that reveals that the spiritual truth that God has set into place is true. And you'll see this. And so as we start going in that, we got rooted and then we got growing. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, about growing and becoming like Christ. In this season of growing, after we've been planted, and we start to grow our roots, and then we start to sprout up. And then we're in this season. We never leave the season of rooted. Obviously, we never want to leave being planted. You don't pluck something up and hope that it continues to grow, right? You get in this season, you're rooted, and then you're growing up. And this season is focused on, as you're growing in your faith, it's focused on, I got to be developed. That's what Morgan was talking about. I've got to actually start to develop some things. It's about building the right habits. It's about, in fact, one of the key things in this is diving in and growing in community. We have groups that we have at Collective. That's one of the best ways to grow as a believer in community. Not just to find friends that make you happy, but to grow together. And there is this place, it is joyful, it's fun, but man, there's something that happens in groups that we see transformation actually lived out. And this is where, as you establish longevity, what this whole graph is about transformation. I've got to be transformed, not I want to change my action. This isn't about behavior modification is what it's called. It's not about just start to do these things. It's actually about a couple key, how do we grow? Growing in real transformation happens in three ways. And number one, what we see is that growing happens by pulling up from the roots. Remember, we never, ever, ever leave the season of being rooted. And so when you talk about how do I grow as a believer, I don't know about you guys, but usually in the first few 5, 10 years of being a believer, there's a level of going, I feel like I'm trying to be something that I'm not right now. And there's even times where I feel like I got to show up with a mask and I got to feel almost fake at times. And the reality is that what we're doing is we're trying to form ourselves. We're trying to conform into the culture that is a church, that is Christianity, when in reality, we don't need that. We don't need to conform into any culture. We need to be transformed. And Morgan talks about being developed as the chemistry that's needed to develop film, develop a photo, and a chemical change can't be undone. right? It's not like you fold the paper over a couple times and then you unfold it. Crap, I really messed myself up. No, it's this process that takes time, takes transformation. And so how do I grow? Well, number one, I pull up from the roots. That's why I stay rooted. I never leave this season. There's a, going back to psychology, psychology talks about this thing called mirroring. In this idea, if anybody know what I'm talking about? Know what mirroring is? When you start hanging around someone, you will start to act, look, talk like them, right? If you are bilingual and you go to a nation that speaks Spanish and you can be fluent in Spanish, when you come back, even if while you're speaking English, you will still have a little like an extra deep Spanish accent, right? When you spend, that's why different people talk in different ways, because when I grow up in a certain community, if I grow up in a gang-focused community, and the way I will talk for the rest of my life will probably have a little extra swag, right? It doesn't matter how far you remove yourself from like, you still got, if I grow up in a highly intellectual, very studious family, I will probably talk with a lot of enunciation in all of my words, right? The reality is I mirror who I'm around. You say, you want to see you in 5 years? Look at the people that you're surrounding yourself with and the content that you're consuming. That's who you will be. And so as we look at how do I actually start growing? How do I actually start to find transformation? It's this growing season where a plant comes up and it starts to grow, but you dive in and you pull your nutrients from your roots. How do I grow? By forcing myself to do things I don't want to do? No. Sometimes I got to do stuff I don't want to do. But how do I grow? I spend time with Jesus. A ridiculous amount of time with the Lord. I replace the music that I'm listening to with worship music so that the things just in my mind, I start to actually think in the way that I want to be thinking. Otherwise, I'm going to continue to mirror the things that I'm consuming. The people I'm hanging around, I'm going to be wanting to be actually hanging around people who are believers, who help to encourage me in that. But most importantly, I'm pursuing God on my own. I'm pulling up from this root system that I've developed, and I'm actually pulling from that. And I will start to find myself to become more like him, not because I'm forcing myself to do certain things and fit into a mold. No, I am becoming like him because I'm just around him, and I'm being transformed from the inside before I ever see it on the outside. That's why as a pastor, if you just come to faith, like, I don't need you to like filter all your language and to filter all your like hide your vape pen, like from like all this stuff. I don't need that, because I know we're in a process of transformation. And I know at some point, I know that vape pen's going to be revealed as an idol. And it's going to be revealed as a crutch that God's like, nope. I am your crutch. I know that the stuff that you're looking on your phone, that's what you do when you're stressed and when you need to fall back on something. When you're stressed, come to me. I know that the language that you talk with is not honoring, it's not wholesome, but it's okay. Come to me. I'll start to transform you. And then it won't be this, don't say that thing. It'll be like I don't want to, and it's not coming out of me as much anymore because I'm being transformed from the inside. And I'm looking for ways to love people. And so the things that I start doing are an overflow of my roots, an overflow of my deep rootedness. Now, here's the reality. When we talk about growth, when we talk about pulling up from the roots, that's exactly what it is. It's a process. It's transformation. It takes time. There's things that when you get it, right? When you say yes to Jesus, when you go from dead to planted, and like it is crazy. I've heard what people have described. They go, literally, no joking, people go, did it just get brighter in here? Like literally just go, I feel lighter. I literally feel lighter. People go, there's this access to this joy that I have. I have this purpose. I have this hope. I have this, and like instantly, it's this crazy, amazing, like, holy smokes. What happens is this death to life thing that's going on. And not everybody experiences that. And if you didn't, that doesn't mean it's not legitimate. What it does is it's just, these are different symptoms of you got that right away. You went from dead to life, from nothing to something, from not planted to planted, and now the seed which was laying dormant inside you now is activated, and life is starting to grow out of it. But a lot of what we do in our growing takes time. Takes deepening of roots, pulling from those, because I've got some habits, I've got some things. Think about it. If you pray for patience, God's not just going to go, here you go, wow, isn't that amazing? Right? Watch out when you pray for patience. You're going to get opportunities to be patient. If I pray, God, build my faithfulness. Faithfulness takes time. God, I don't trust you. Trust is going to take some time. Trust is going to take some fire. Trust is going to take some real, like actually walking through it for a season so that I can start to trust, not just when things are good, but trust when things are not. And this is what growing is. It's taking that season, taking that long process of I want to be transformed. I don't want to look like a Christian. I want to be a follower of Christ. And in America, it's really easy to figure out what it looks like to look like a Christian. There's cultural Christianity all over the place. I look like it. If you follow Christian hashtags on social media, there's this similar vibe and similar look, and it's like I can fit that. I can change my attire. I can change whatever it may like, and I can mold myself into something that I'm not. Here's the reality. I don't want that. You don't want that. None of us wants that. You don't want performers. Jesus continued to condemn and say, hey, I don't care how many good things you're doing. I want your heart, and you haven't given me access to your heart. So we got to pull up from the roots. And then, I want to pull up Colossians 2, 6 through 7. And this is what it talks about. This is the passage that we've been diving into. If you haven't, pull it up, memorize it, get it into your heart, because this is what it says. It says, now just as you trusted Christ to save you, trust him too for each day's problems. I gave my life to Jesus. Now what do? Now live in vital union with him. Let your roots grow down into him and draw up nourishment from him. See that you go on growing in the Lord and become strong and vigorous in the truth you were taught. Let your lives overflow with joy and thanksgiving for all that he has done. This is what happens when we grow our roots down and then we start to grow up. Then we start to grow up. And this is where what plants will do, if you actually look at the etymology of how a plant works, a tree, the only living part of the trunk is the very outside. The inside is dead. The outside is building a new layer to be able to withstand more strength, to be built up and to be strengthened. And there's certain parts of the tree that grows, but it's not always the part that we think. We think like this thick thing is coming up and just growing out from it's not growing out here. It's growing out. It's building this breadth. And then you'll see the twigs at the end that they're growing out more. And the reality is that we've got to pull up from the roots, and then we have to actually put it to work. And that's number 2. How do I grow? I pull up from the roots and then I put it to work. There's an old Irish proverb that says this. It says, it doesn't matter how tall your grandfather is, you've got to do your own growing. And the reality of I don't just grow myself, or I don't just grow based off of someone else. I got to grow myself. I don't care how faithful your parents were. I don't care how amazing your church is. I don't care how deeply impactful your small group or your group host is. I don't care how much you serve. There's a level of going, I've got to grow me. You are responsible for your own growth. So now I pull up from the roots and I put it to work. The energy and the nutrition is actually being activated. What does this look like? This looks like actual obedience. It looks like actually doing something. Because transformation, if we're talking about transformation in this whole thing, it doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen in the seats of Millard North. Now, don't get me wrong. The presence of God is here. Oh my goodness, he is so powerful. People, when you go, I don't know what it was, I step in and what I'm feeling and what I'm like, I'm crying and I don't know how to describe it. It's incredible. That's the Lord. That's him ministering to your heart. And what is that? That's the spark that he goes, okay, are you going to do something with it? Transformation doesn't happen here. It starts here, and it really happens once we walk through the doors and go, what am I actually going to change because of who he is to me? Who I've experienced him to be. And most of the time when we have seasons of silence from the Lord, we're like, I don't feel like I'm growing. I feel like I'm asking. I feel like I'm praying. I'm reading my Bible. I'm serving. I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm not hearing from God. Most of the time, not all the time, sometimes God's building that faithfulness, right? But most of the time when I talk to people, there's something that God called them to do, and they never put it to work. They got nutrients from the roots, and they never actually applied it to building and establishing themselves in the faith. And so it's kind of like if Morgan and I are at the house and she's like, hey, meet me. We're going to be buying a new car. And so meet me at the dealership at 10 a.m. I'll see you there. And at 10 a.m., I'm walking around the house and I'm going, babe, Morgan, where are you? Where are you? I'm calling your name, and you're nowhere to be found. And we do this with God. Where are you? Come on. I've been crying out. I've been looking everywhere. I looked upstairs. I looked downstairs. I looked in the closet. I looked in the storage room. I looked everywhere. I don't see. Where are you, God? And he's like, I'm right over here. I'm right where I told you I would be. But there's some level of obedience that's needed first. So what is it? What is it? Whether if God says, I need you to dive into I need you to start reading your word, that's where you're going to find me. And we're not reading our word, and then guess what? He's going to be like, I'm right here. I'm right behind the door of obedience. I'm right behind. But sometimes it's costly. Sometimes God's like, you will find me right behind the door of that relationship that you need to end. You will find me right behind the door of that person that you need to forgive. You will find, I'm still leading. I'm still here. In fact, I'll still sneak in and be like, come on. I'll still bring that conviction. I'll still give encouragement, but I'm over here. Come on, draw near to the Lord and he will draw near to you. There's our side of it that he says, come on. Are you pulling up from the roots, and then are you actually putting it to work? Because that's where transformation happens. Because God has done something in my heart. Now I'm going to do something in my life. And on the other side of that obedience is where you will see growth. and it's hard. Sometimes it comes with financial risk. Sometimes it comes with relational tension. Sometimes it comes with no one else is going to understand this, but I just got to obey. And here's the reality, that when I do that, that's where I'm going to find the Lord, and that's where I'm the only way that I'm going to find abundant life is by pursuing that and pursuing Him and not pursuing me and not staying where I'm at and just going, well, I'm just going to pray more. Or I'm just going to, come on. I'm right here. So I got to pull up from the roots. I've got to actually put it to work. And then that's how we grow. We grow by pulling up from the roots and putting to work. But then I want to give a little glimpse to the next step in this cycle, and that is to produce. What does a tree do next? What is a tree? It grows with the purpose of producing a blessing. We're going to get into this a little bit more next week that I'm really excited about. But here's the reality. When we are growing, we're going to have this thing inside of us. Even at the very beginning, we're going to be like, God, use me. Because He's revealing something special to us. He's revealing something like, I've got a bigger purpose for you. And we're going to be like, come on, God. I want to see you use me. I want to see you do something through me. I want to see you produce. I want to see your kingdom advanced. I want to see people be blessed because of what you're doing through me. But if we ask this before we walk through this growth season, we actually see the response given in Hebrews 5 of what He would say to us. Hebrews 5, 11 through 14. It says this, I had a lot more to say about this, but it's hard to get it across to you since you've picked up this bad habit of not actually listening. You hear me, but you're not growing. You're not putting it to work. He says, by this time you ought to be teachers. Here I find you needing someone to sit down with you and go over the basics of God again. Here's something crazy. I'm a Bible student in college at this time years ago, and there's a speaker that came in and he said, you guys are studying the deep theologies of how to parse out through the Hebrew and the Greek, and you haven't applied the basic preschool theology of read your word and pray. And I was like, that's me. I'm getting a good understanding of the word without getting it in my heart. He's like, I'm saying the same thing to you that I've been saying before. Starting from square one, and that's where we're still at. Baby's milk is what you're living on when you should have been on solid food long ago. Milk is for beginners, the inexperienced in God's ways. Solid food is for the mature who have some practice in telling right from wrong. He doesn't take this lightly. If we're not growing, if we're not pulling up from the roots, getting the truth, in that season of it's about seeking truth. It's about pursuing that and then applying it. And we go, man, I want to see God use me. I want to see God. And He's like, I can't use you. If I use you, what I'm going to produce, it's this nasty, ugly, it's not going to be good. We're going to have immature, unripe fruit that when people consume, when you're trying to bless people, it's actually going to have this bitterness, and it's gonna sour in your mouth, and you're gonna have it's terrible. What you're gonna produce is not gonna be good because I gotta grow you. Can we grow? Can we pull up from the roots, put it to work, and then produce a blessing? We can stand up real quick. Can we go back to the chart? What this whole cycle represents, this spiritual growth, you'll see at the very beginning, at the top of the chart, when I'm dead, I'm not pursuing Christ. Who am I pursuing? I'm pursuing myself, right? When I'm planted, then I start to realize a little bit differently. But as I'm rooted, I'm looking for truth, And it is. I'm trying to figure out the things that I understand. I'm trying to figure out if this thing is real. I'm building a foundation. And then as I'm growing, I'm developing habits. I'm getting into community, but I'm also, a lot of it still is about like, I've got to establish longevity. I've got to get myself to a place where I can, and the further on this side of the chart, you're actually going to see it is a little bit me focused. And as you start to produce, you start to get this revelation that's beyond me. And that the blessing, I'm about being a blessing. I want to impact. I'm starting to become others focused, not me focused. I start to show up to church, not just because I feel like it today, but I start to show up because I understand that I'm a part of the body. And even if the sermon doesn't hit me where I'm at right now, man, I get to be a part of the body, and I'm gonna get to worship with my family, and maybe God will use me to be a blessing to someone else, and maybe I can find someone to sit by and I can make a new friend, and maybe I can talk to someone and encourage them in their faith. And maybe because now it's not about me, but I can't do that if I haven't got to a place where I've actually been growing. If I haven't built the roots, established the foundation, so that I may become a blessing. And so what I want to challenge us to is to a season of faithfulness and of growth, because I don't know, a couple different, what are the convictions that God's given you that he's like, I'm right behind that door of obedience? There may be some convictions that God's given you. Maybe there's some things that are in your life and you're looking at the chart and you're like, man, I don't know if I've ever actually truly let God into my heart and say, all right, I am yours. It's not about me, it's about you. It's not, and I'm not using you to get me to a happier, nicer, safer place, because it may not be safer. But holy smokes, is it better? And this is the crazy thing is, as we look at this chart, did you know this growing season is so essential for an apple tree? Just specifically, it takes, let me look it up. I just pulled this up. It takes usually up to 8 years for an apple tree to produce one apple. Because as we're trying to, if we try to shortchange our growth, we're not going to be able to bear the things that God's given us to give to others. We're not going to be able to withstand the weight of the fruit and the blessing. And when an apple tree is 8 years old and it's got these strong branches, it's like, oh, this is just natural. It feels great. It's good. But man, if I don't have that strength inside of me, if I haven't actually done that growing, I'm never going to see God use me in the way that I know he's calling me to. So respond to the convictions, dive deep and pull up. Let the Lord convict you. Respond to those. And then the question I have is, are you growing for you, or are you growing to become a blessing? Are you growing to fit into a group? Man, I love how welcoming and inviting the entirety of Collective is, in that we got a lot of people who are just come on, open arms, right? And if you love, hopefully that was one of the things that you're like, man, that's what I love about Collective, and that's one of the things that brought me to Collective. However, if we stop there, then we stop at it's me. And God's like, I got more. I want to grow you, not just for you, but for you to become a blessing. So I want to pray real quick here. And I want to ask whatever your response is to the Lord, this is you and the Lord. This is very practical. This is about growth. This is about transformation. So it's outside of these seats. What are you going to do? But there's some things that I can say right now. I make a decision. I make that spark that moves me forward into transformation. So if there's a conviction you got to respond to, if there's a yes you got to say to the Lord, or if there's a surrender and a removing of myself, I want you to respond. And I want you, for anybody who needs to respond, just come on up, and I want to say a quick prayer. Come on up. If you go, man, I need to respond to a conviction. I need to give my life to Jesus for the first time. I need to strip away some things and give up for myself and trying to do this thing for me and for my image. Come on, come up forward. I know we got more than just one. Let's go. If you're not growing, we're not going to see God use us. So Lord, I just pray. I pray right now for every single person that's coming forward right now. God, for the things that you're convicting in our hearts. And Lord, God, may we not become stagnant. May we not become stuck. The exciting, attractive, easy, fun things that we get to experience in your kingdom, God, I pray we would also embrace the walking it out, the responding to the hard things and to your conviction, so that we can see, God, you do more through us than we ever imagined because of what you've done in us.